Right now, inside your skull, there are 86 billion neurons firing in patterns so complex that no supercomputer on Earth can fully replicate them. And in some people, roughly 1 in 5, those patterns have gone wrong in ways that science is only beginning to map. Not wrong like a character flaw, not wrong like a bad decision. Wrong like a bridge with a structural fault you cannot see from the outside. The bridge still stands. Cars still cross it. But underneath, something is straining that was never meant to strain that hard. We talk about mental illness like it's a mood, like it's a personality trait somebody could adjust if they really wanted to. We say things like, just think positive to someone whose brain is chemically incapable of generating the neurochemical signal that makes positivity feel possible. We tell someone with anxiety to calm down when their nervous system has already decided, at a level below conscious thought, that the threat is real and the danger is now. We do this not because we're cruel. We do it because we genuinely don't know what's happening inside. And that ignorance costs people. It costs them relationships, careers, sometimes their lives. So here's what I want to do. I want to take you inside. Not into the clinical language, not into the DSM criteria, not into the sanitized version that gets taught in health class. I want to take you into the actual felt experience of what it is to live inside a brain that is misfiring in specific, documentable, biological ways. Because here's what I keep coming back to. When you understand the mechanism, the behavior stops looking like weakness. It starts looking like physics. Let's start with depression. And I don't mean sadness. This is the most important distinction, and almost nobody makes it clearly enough. Sadness is a response. Something bad happens, your brain processes it as a loss, and it generates an emotional signal proportionate to that loss. That signal eventually fades as the brain adapts. Depression is not that. Depression is the absence of signal. Think of it this way. Imagine your brain has a reward circuit, a system designed to release dopamine and serotonin when something good happens, when you accomplish something, when you connect with someone you love. In a healthy brain, that system fires reliably. It creates what neuroscientists call hedonic tone, the baseline capacity to feel pleasure. In depression, that system goes quiet. Not sad quiet. Silent quiet. Food tastes like nothing. Music you've loved for 20 years reaches your ears and just stops there. You lie in bed not because you're lazy, but because the part of your brain that generates motivation, the anterior cingulate cortex, the dopaminergic pathways, has essentially gone offline. Getting up feels not hard but pointless. And the cruelest part? The brain that has lost the ability to feel good also loses the ability to imagine feeling good again. That's why depressed people often can't just think about the future. The future feels not scary. It feels flat, inaccessible, like trying to remember a color you've never seen. And then there's anxiety, which looks from the outside like worrying too much. From the inside, it is something else entirely. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection system, is supposed to fire when there's a real danger. It's an ancient system built for survival, and it's incredibly fast. It processes sensory information before your conscious mind even knows what's happening. In an anxious brain, this system has its threshold set dangerously low. It fires for emails. It fires for social interactions. It fires for the sound of a phone ringing. And when it fires, it does not send a gentle suggestion. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing shallows, your muscles tense. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational, reasoning part of your brain, gets partially bypassed because, in a real emergency, you don't have time to think. You need to react. The problem is, the emergency isn't real. But your body doesn't know that. It is running a survival program at full intensity in response to a Tuesday afternoon. Living with anxiety is like having a fire alarm in your house that goes off randomly, without warning, for reasons that make no external sense. You can't just ignore it. The sound is too loud. The body's response is too total. Here's what's fascinating about OCD, and this is the part most people never hear. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is not about being neat or organized. It is a malfunction in a specific neural circuit, the loop between the orbitofrontal cortex, the thalamus, and the basal ganglia. In a healthy brain, this circuit acts as an error detection system. It notices when something is wrong and sends a signal. Fix this. Once you fix it, the signal stops. In OCD, the signal never stops. The brain fires the "something is wrong" alarm. The person performs a behavior to relieve the alarm, and instead of the circuit quieting down, it immediately fires again. Wrong. Still wrong. Fix it again. The compulsion isn't irrational. It is a rational response to an irrational signal. The person isn't choosing to check the lock 17 times. They are trying to make an alarm stop that the brain refuses to silence. What it feels like from inside is a thought that sticks. Not a thought you can dismiss. A thought with weight, with urgency, with a texture of wrongness that sits in the chest and won't dissolve until the ritual is performed. And even then, only briefly. Bipolar disorder requires us to understand that the brain doesn't just regulate emotion. It regulates the entire energetic state of the human system. In bipolar disorder, this regulation breaks down in two directions. During a manic episode, the brain's dopaminergic system goes into overdrive. Ideas come faster than speech. Sleep feels unnecessary because the brain is generating so much internal energy that rest feels like loss. Confidence expands beyond what the evidence supports. Judgment compresses. Decisions that would normally take weeks get made in minutes. And it feels, from the inside, like being finally, fully alive. Like the volume on existence has been turned all the way up. This is what makes mania so dangerous. It doesn't feel like illness. It feels like clarity. And then the system crashes. The dopamine floods out. The serotonin drops. And the brain that was running at 200 miles per hour hits a wall, and the depression that follows can be the deepest, most disorienting kind. Because it comes after the high. After the feeling of being invincible. Schizophrenia is perhaps the condition most distorted by cultural misrepresentation. It is not split personality. It is a fundamental disruption in the brain's ability to distinguish between internal and external reality. The mechanism involves dopamine dysregulation in specific neural pathways. An excess of dopamine signaling in areas responsible for assigning significance to experiences. What this creates is a brain that treats its own internal signals as external events. Thoughts become voices. Internally generated perceptions become indistinguishable from sensory input. And here's what I want you to sit with for a moment. The voices in schizophrenia are not dramatic Hollywood whispers. They are often mundane, persistent, and completely indistinguishable from a real human voice. The person hearing them is not confused in the way we mean when we say confused. They are receiving information that their brain has certified as real. The terror of psychosis is not that the world looks strange. It is that the world looks exactly as real as it always did, except that the world has changed into something that cannot be trusted. ADHD sits in a different category, and yet the underlying mechanism resonates with the same theme. It is not a deficit of attention. It is a dysregulation of attention, specifically a dopaminergic system that fails to generate sufficient engagement signal for tasks that don't produce immediate reward. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for sustained focus and impulse control, is underactive in ways that are measurable on brain scans. What it feels like is not laziness. It feels like trying to watch a movie while someone keeps changing the channel. The interest is there, the intention is there, but the brain cannot hold the signal. And then something genuinely interesting appears, something novel, urgent, emotionally charged, and suddenly the focus is absolute. Hyperfocus so complete that hours disappear. This inconsistency is what confuses people. You can focus when you want to, but that's exactly the point. The wanting has nothing to do with it. The dopamine system responds to stimulation, not intention. And this is the part I keep coming back to. Every single one of these conditions has one thing in common. From the outside, they look like choices. From the inside, they feel like weather. You don't choose weather. You don't argue with weather. You don't tell a hurricane to calm down because it's making things difficult. But we do this to people every day. We tell the depressed person to try harder. We tell the anxious person to relax. We tell the person with OCD that they know, rationally, the door is locked. What changes when you understand this is not that accountability disappears. People with mental illness still navigate the world. They still make decisions. They still build lives of extraordinary depth and meaning, often, in fact, because of the interior complexity they carry. What changes is the texture of your compassion. When someone cancels plans again, when someone snaps at you without apparent reason, when someone can't seem to get out of their own way no matter how much they want to, you stop seeing failure. You start seeing a system under pressure that is doing its absolute best with the wiring it was given. The brain is the most complex object in the known universe, and some brains are running that complexity under conditions the rest of us will never feel. That's not tragedy. That's not weakness. That is a form of endurance so quiet and so constant that most of us will never recognize it for what it is. Until now. And that recognition, that small permanent shift in how you see the people around you, is worth more than any clinical definition. Because empathy built on understanding doesn't fade. It becomes part of how you move through the world. And the world changes quietly when enough people move through it that way.